Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a skill that can literally transform both your professional trajectory and your day-to-day life. We're unpacking the 11 pillars of masterful public speaking. My main goal here is to guide you through these incredibly effective, highly structured techniques so you can master your delivery, command absolutely any room you walk into, and guarantee your message is always heard and respected.
Okay, let's dive right into this. You know, when most of us hear the phrase public speaking, our brains instantly picture those massive keynote stages, the blinding spotlights, and heavily rehearsed TED Talks. But I want to challenge that right out of the gate. As the source material points out, the exact same techniques that work on a massive stage apply just as powerfully to your everyday conversations. We really need to shatter this misconception that public speaking is just for a stadium of thousands. It's happening every single day of your life.
Here's our roadmap for today. We'll be looking at 1. Beyond the keynote stage. 2. Preparation and mindset. 3. Structuring your message. 4. Physical and visual command. 5. Psychological and auditory hooks. And finally, 6. Building everyday influence.
Kicking things off with Section 1, Beyond the Keynote Stage. Think about a high-stakes TED Talk versus your standard Tuesday morning team meeting. The stakes, they're actually surprisingly similar. Whether you're addressing a tight-knit team in a small conference room or presenting a massive quarterly update to a board of directors, how you present yourself directly influences how people respond to you. Mastering your communication in these everyday environments is exactly what dictates whether people trust your judgment or if they just tune you out completely.
Moving right along to Section 2, Preparation and Mindset.
Our very first pillar is what we call the 90-second reset. Look, if you're feeling those pre-presentation jitters right before you begin, your golden ticket is to take a dedicated moment, literally just 90 seconds, to breathe deeply and reset. Doing this completely centers your focus, calms down your nervous system, and guarantees that when you finally do open your mouth, you're operating from a place of grounded control rather than sheer panic.
Next up is the rehearsal truth. So many people try to memorize their entire speech word for word, and honestly, they just end up sounding robotic or losing their place. Instead, here's the secret. Practice the opening of your talk 3 times more than the rest of it. Why? Because that opening is exactly where your confidence lives. If you absolutely nail those first few moments, your nerves just melt away, your audience is instantly hooked, and the rest of your presentation is going to flow so naturally.
Let's get into Section 3, Structuring your message.
Since that opening is so crucial, let's talk about the 3-part open. This is literally the perfect sequential formula to hook an audience right out of the gate. Step 1, start with a question. This forces them to actively think. Step 2, share a quick story. This builds an immediate human connection. And Step 3, give them a promise. Tell them exactly what they're going to get out of listening to you. Question, story, promise. It's a structure that absolutely works every single time to capture attention.
And speaking of threes, our next pillar is the rule of 3. You see, our brains are just hardwired to love patterns. If you throw a sprawling list of 10 different things at someone, they're going to forget most of them by the time they leave the room. But if you group your key ideas into 3s, they stick like glue.
Another massive structural pillar is the 2-minute story rule. Come on, we've all been there, trapped listening to a story that just drags on until we've completely zoned out. Don't be that speaker. Keep your stories strictly under 2 minutes. That way you get all the incredible benefits of an emotional connection without ever sacrificing the momentum of your overall message.
Which brings us to Section 4, Physical and Visual Command.
Let's break down a couple of foundational physical mechanics. First off, the power position. Instead of nervously pacing around, try planting your feet shoulder-width apart and just letting your hands hang relaxed at your sides. It projects an immense amount of confidence and stability. Pair that with the palm-up principle. Whenever you're speaking, try to keep your palms open and facing upward. It's fascinating, but psychologically, an open posture and visible palms subconsciously build a really deep sense of trust with your listener.
Now, what about eye contact? There are 2 game-changing techniques here. First is the timing-based 5-5-5 rule. This involves scanning 5 faces in the crowd, holding each person's gaze for 5 seconds, and repeating this process every 5 minutes. The other option is the spatial lighthouse method. This is where you mentally set up invisible anchor points around the room before you even start speaking. Then, as you deliver your message, you smoothly rotate your gaze between those anchors. Both of these are fantastic ways to totally command the visual space of any room.
All right, diving into Section 5, Psychological and Auditory Hooks.
Let's talk about the power pause. That rule of 3 we talked about earlier, it applies here too, but this time as a deliberate 3-second pause. When you make a really key point, don't just speed right into your next sentence. Stop. Pause for 3 full seconds. Let the message actually land. Doing this gives your audience the essential time they need to absorb the real weight of what you just told them.
And that brings up a really critical question I want you to chew on for a second. How do you weave a thread that your audience actively wants to follow? Seriously, take a moment to think about that. How are you keeping them mentally engaged from the very first word you drop all the way to the last?
Well, the answer is the callback technique. This basically means referencing earlier points later in your talk to create a cohesive thread that people can easily follow. For example, remember earlier in this explainer when we talked about the 3-part open? By bringing that up right now, I've just playfully executed a callback. It actually rewards your audience for paying attention and makes your whole presentation feel incredibly unified.
Finally, Section 6, Building Everyday Influence. I really want to hammer home the ultimate stakes here with a direct quote from the source material. It says, "Those moments determine whether they trust your judgment or tune you out." These 11 pillars, the 90-second breathing, the power pauses, the rule of 3, the structured eye contact, they are absolutely not just cheap tricks for a stage. They are your fundamental tools for building everyday authority. Every single time you speak, you've got an opportunity to build influence. So I'm going to leave you with this final provocative thought. Which of these 11 pillars are you going to use to command the room in your very next conversation? Are you going to try the power pause, the palm up principle, or maybe that 90-second reset? Pick just one, test it out, and watch how your everyday influence starts to grow. Thanks so much for hanging out with me for this explainer. Keep learning, keep practicing, and I'll catch you next time.